empowering your life. Welcome to the Sphere. This episode is sponsored by
Dr. Taraya M. Richmond, PLLC. When it comes to your family's health and women's services, and you're looking for excellence in healthcare, look no further than your family medicine physician, Dr. Taraya M. Richmond, PLLC. Call Dr. Richmond today at 713-453-6962 to schedule your next appointment.
Looking to advertise? Join the Sphere's vast demographic reach of thousands of people all over the world. Send an email today to advertise@thesphere.tv or call us at area code 832-772-7789. KOG and Company. Are your unique gifts and talents changing the world? Do you desire to belong to a community of unity? Visit KOGpassion.com to learn more about the Unleash Your Dopeness movement.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Docs. We're excited to have you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Those of you who have been subscribing and tuning in on the regular, we appreciate that. We, of course, are here to educate, empower, and inspire you. We have a great show planned for you today. As you may notice, the studio is a little vacant. We sort of gave the ladies the day off. We're doing a man show, talking about urological issues in men. We've got a great guest that we'll get into. And, in fact, I'm going to kick it over to him to sort of introduce himself. He is in here via Skype. Worked a full day, couldn't make it into the studio, but we appreciate him being available via Skype. So I'm going to let him introduce himself to you, tell you a little bit about himself, and then we'll get things going. So over to you, Dr. Tojuola.
Hello, everyone. Appreciate y'all listening today. So I'm Dr. Tojuola. I'm a urologist here in Houston. I work for Houston Methodist, mainly in the Baytown site. So I trained and did my residency in urology at University of Tennessee in Memphis, went to undergrad and medical school at the University of Florida. I was born in Nigeria, grew up there, moved to Florida when I was younger, and I'm glad for the opportunity to be here in Houston and be a Texan.
Yes, we welcome anybody who wants to come to Texas. We Texans always think very, very highly of our great state. But like I said, we appreciate you being available tonight and getting into this conversation with us. Before we get into the conversation that we're going to have about urology and urological issues, going to do a quick hot topic, and I think this is a pertinent hot topic, being that the Astros are in the thick of the playoffs. The Rockets are about to start their seasons. The Texans won a game last week, even though they always tend to give people heart attacks and make that high blood pressure flare. But I recently was just sort of browsing CNN.com, and there was an article that they had written last Friday, I believe, basically saying that there is some research or some studies that show that your sports team can actually affect your health. So those of you people, there's the link that's up there too. So those of you who are diehard fans, I think they specifically reference that obviously in close game situations or overtime situations or what have you, basically high stakes, high pressure situations, that people that have cardiovascular issues can have an increase in their blood pressure. They can have chest pain. They actually referenced a story about a gentleman who was at a game, and it was sort of one of these scenarios where it was kind of coming down to the wire, and he actually ended up having to go to the hospital and being admitted for his chest pain. So keep that in mind. It's still just a game. We obviously want our teams to win. We're pulling for the Astros as they play tomorrow night. Excited for the Rockets to get started. And then, also we're happy whenever the Texans get a win, because you never know when that's going to happen. Not trying to throw too much shade at them. But just a little fun something to keep in mind. So that's our hot topic for this week. So like I said, we got Dr. Tojuola, fellowship-trained urologist here with us today. We are going to be spending our time here talking about urology and urological issues in men. I think one of the general things that I actually was speaking to my dad this weekend about just men in general is how difficult and challenging it is to get men to go see the doctor and do your regular checkups, especially when you advance in age and you need your, screening, colonoscopies, prostate exams, things like that. And I'll kick it over to him in just a second to ask a few questions, but I tend to be a numbers person and just sort of like to do a little bit of research about the issue. So these numbers are based off of data from the CDC. The CDC is a great source if you just are looking for statistics or quick fact sheets. And this is 2010 data, so it's a bit dated. And so probably needs to be revised. But as of 2010, there were 19 million visits to non-federally employed office-based urologists in the U.S. 84% of those were men who were age 45 or older. And the top 5 diagnoses that brought men to the urologist were either known malignancy or concern for malignancy, benign prostatic hypertrophy, urinary tract infection, urinary stones, and then another category was just other. And then in that same document, they referenced a 2007 article from the NIH that stated that urologic diseases cost $11 billion in that year, and that was in 2007. Again, so a bit dated, 11 years ago. So sort of to sort of kick things off, Dr. Tojuola, in your practice, both through residency, fellowship, and now in your private practice, what are, in addition to what that was listed there, what are some of the common things that you see when you are getting either new patients or follow-up patients to your practice?
So a big part of urology is dealing with the urinary tract,
Right.
and that's a multitude of things. So it's funny when you think about it that we're dealing with a few organs in one organ system, but there's so many things that can go wrong. So whether that's cancer, from kidney cancer to prostate cancer being primarily a male disease,
Right.
A disease that every man will get. It's just a matter of whether you'll live long enough to get it. BPH, like you said earlier, which causes lower urinary tract symptoms, another problem that it's just a matter of how long you live before you get that.
Sure.
So we can go from benign diseases such as that to cancer. We get cancer in the bladder, which affects lots of patients, especially patients that are smokers. And then we deal with urinary stones from the kidneys to bladder stones in men who aren't emptying their bladder well, or women who have complications from other issues. I do see a lot of patients, men and women, for recurrent urinary tract infections.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of that has to do with voiding dysfunction, people that don't empty their bladder well. And then I see patients for simple issues such as men that want sterility.
Right.
Do a lot of vasectomies in the office and take care of that. I see a lot of women also for urinary incontinence and pelvic floor issues
Right.
that are later in life. So there's a broad variety of issues that affect our genitourinary organs. And like I said, it can be as complex as having a cancer talk, or more straightforward to something like someone wanting sterility and vasectomies. And then the flip side of that, men who have fertility problems,
Right.
and assistance with that issue.
Right. Yeah. Well, I actually wanted to ask you about that because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of in trying to learn a little bit about you, you did a fellowship, I believe, in microsurgery and male infertility. Is that correct?
Yes, that is very correct. So that's a very, very specialized
Definitely.
aspect of urology. So when you talk about male infertility, that usually is a more common fellowship. Not really common, but that's something that's more standard, where you go and learn how to take care of men that have fertility issues,
Right.
from the medical aspect and also the surgical aspect.
Sure.
Learning how to do vasectomy reversals, learning how to address men that have ejaculatory duct obstruction and how to fix that. And then we also talked about, how to assist men that end up wanting IVF. What my fellowship was a little more specialized in is how to do a lot of these microsurgical procedures with the robot. So trying
Right.
to take fertility into the 21st century and advance the technology that we're using to address these problems.
It's incredible. I'm going to have some more questions about that to follow up. But before we do that, I got to shout out our first sponsor. So this particular portion of the episode is sponsored by True Digital. You're online right now, and so are your customers. The question is, how do you actively reach them? Marketing has to be a consistent journey, and we're here to walk with you every step of the way. True Digital Media Consulting can help with website development, online ads, your business reputation, and organic growth on search engines. Give us a call today to discuss a customized strategy for your business at 832-934-4436 or send us an email at info@truedigitalmediaconsulting.com. Mention the Sphere to receive a free 30-minute strategy consultation. So I thought, kind of getting right back into things, I thought that was very interesting because I think generally speaking, unless it affects you personally, and this might be just sort of my own ignorance, right? When people think of fertility issues, you don't typically think of the man so much, right? Obviously, that takes two to, get to that point, but you typically think of, if there's issues with, eggs and the number of eggs or age of a female, if they are maybe in an advanced age in terms of being able to get pregnant and carry. So I found it quite interesting that, there's so much, a whole specialty and specification sort of dedicated to learning what things you can do on the male side of that, to help, couples and people who are having issues with that. So.
Yeah, that's very true. And so I think I'm glad that you brought that up because that's something that goes along with what you said earlier, what we were talking about earlier with men just not seeking to, either be evaluated or take care of themselves and ensure that they're in tip-top shape and health.
Right.
Fertility is an issue that affects men and women equally.
Right.
If you look at the numbers, it's about 50-50 chance that the man or the woman is the male or the female is the cause or may be the reason for the fertility issue.
Right.
And so I recommend to anyone who's having a fertility issue that you both get worked up. The female sees a reproductive endocrinologist and the male usually will, need to see a urologist. And most urologists can do an initial fertility workup.
Right.
And if they're comfortable enough with it, continue to address it, or send you to someone who's more specialized in fertility issues within the field of urology.
Right.
Some reproductive endocrinologists are also willing to address both the male and female components if they're comfortable and have taken care of it enough. But yeah, it's serious. It's a problem that affects both sexes. And so, it's a discussion also that you have to have with both partners because we're talking about something that emotionally is taxing and can also financially be very taxing. So there's a lot of planning that has to be involved with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to ask that was kind of a nice lead in. I appreciate that. About sort of the psychosocial and I guess almost emotional aspect of not just fertility issues, but men in general in terms of dealing with, issues of continence or a concern of prostate cancer. Sort of how do you see that play out, and then how do you deal with that? If you guys want to hear that, you're going to have to subscribe because this is the Facebook Live portion. We're going to kind of take a break on that. So thank you for those who are tuning in on Facebook Live. Of course, you can follow us on multiple different platforms. We ask that you guys subscribe to our show via either iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, or Stitcher. We also would like you guys to review the show to make sure that we are providing you with the content that you want to see and hear. And then also share this post. Share the Facebook Lives, the podcasts on the different platforms with your friends and your family. And then if you're so inclined, donate. We can certainly use money to keep this thing going and to make sure we're delivering and bringing you the best content. So we're signing off of Facebook Live, so tune in to the rest of the podcast if you want to hear the rest of the conversation, which I'm sure you will want to. So like I said, that sort of leads me into a question of and I'm right there with most. It's hard for me to go to the doctor, right? And I think the excuse during training was, oh man, I'm too busy with residency or fellowship, whatever. I'll figure all that out later, right? In your experience as a urologist, what do you find, or do you find a common theme amongst specifically men that say, I was afraid of coming to see you because of X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, so I'll tell you that one of the things I've discovered amongst the male population is that guys tend to think ignorance is bliss.
Sure.
If I
Yeah.
don't know something's wrong, then it doesn't matter. Or, I had blood in my urine a month ago.
Right.
It went away, so I wasn't worried anymore, right?
Right.
Whereas that's something that probably needs to be evaluated, especially if, for example, you have a family history of cancer, or if you're a smoker.
Right.
You're at significant risk for having a real problem. But guys tend to want to turn a blind eye when there's a problem,
Sure.
and not have the thorough investigation, because if I don't know, then
everything's
I'm
good, right?
I'm
Yeah.
good, but that's not always the case.
Right.
As I'm sure you also know in your practice, just because currently right now you may be doing okay and you don't notice, or you're not having that symptom anymore, doesn't mean what happened isn't due to something real.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that's one thing I try to stress to patients. And you find that, other than the ignorance is bliss mentality that I think a lot of guys have, a lot of men tend to let other aspects of life sort of take precedence over their own health care.
Sure.
We're usually too busy with work, career, and a lot of other things. Like you said,
Right.
I'm in residency. Why am I going for a checkup?
Right.
We let those things take preeminence over our health and over our well-being. And, as soon as you start realizing that your health is the most important thing you have, the most valuable commodity you have, till you make that connection, then a lot of men suffer from that sort of mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is, man, so true for, me personally, right? And then, like you said, a lot of the patients I see as well, it's, they sort of grit and bear their pain until it's like, I can literally no longer function. So now I realize that, hey, I got to go see, a neurologist or a pain specialist or an orthopedic doctor to figure out if there's something more serious going on, right? Sort of along those same lines, what do you advise patients, or what would be things that you would tell people who maybe have never been to a urologist or are thinking about going to a urologist? What would you tell them are alarm symptoms or signs that would make you say, hey, you need to, expedite this, visit to a urologist or see somebody sooner?
Yeah, so since we're trying to address a lot of men's health
Yeah.
on today's podcast, I'll tell you that the one thing I recommend for men to do is that all guys, once you get into your 50s, it's time to really start to worry, or not even let's not say worry, but time to be more vigilant about your prostate and
Right.
prostate issues.
Yeah.
So from prostate cancer screenings, that's something that's really dear to me and to our field. And also as an African American, as an African male,
Right.
A male of African descent, that's something that's going to be even more particularly important to us. We
Right.
are at high risk for prostate cancer disease,
Right.
just by the mere fact that we're African American males. So once you get into your 50s, it's time to have that discussion with your primary care physician. That's a good place to start, or to see a urologist to have the full, in my opinion, a little more informed discussion
Sure.
about what screening should be like. You need to be screened for prostate cancer issues. If you're starting to notice that, hey man, when I go to the bathroom, it takes me 15 seconds. Whereas before, man, 5 seconds and I'm done and I'm out.
Right.
You probably need to, have someone look into talking to you about, hey, are you having lower urinary tract symptoms? I have had a huge shift in my practice and in my mentality of how I address men with lower urinary tract symptoms versus what I used to do before. We used to throw a lot of medicines at guys
Sure.
who had lower urinary tract issues and urinary problems. But one of the big pushes that we have now, because we have the technology that's finally caught up to the disease of BPH, is bladder health.
Yeah.
Right. So guys that go for a long period of time, either on medication for lower urinary tract symptoms or doing nothing about it, you're doing damage to your bladder. So the way the bladder works is sort of similar to the heart. You got this concentric muscle with muscle fibers that run in all different directions. It's a big sphere. It's over when it starts to overwork itself in terms of trying to push urine out because you have an obstructive prostate. What happens at first hypertrophies, but as it hypertrophies, it eventually starts to lose its function.
Yeah.
Shape and function go hand in hand. I'm sure, as you know, as we know as physicians, but
Right.
engineers, right? You know, things are shaped a certain way in order to enhance their function. And the bladder, being a sphere, the muscles lined up the way they are, once it hypertrophies too much, it doesn't work as well.
Right.
Similar to the heart. If you have aortic stenosis or some sort of blockage,
Right.
heart will pump really hard over a period of time. It poops out, and then you have left ventricular hypertrophy,
Right.
and your heart doesn't work anymore.
Right. So you have
same
all these
thing
other
can happen with the
downstream
bladder.
things that start to happen or
Exactly.
everything. Right.
Downstream effects. So when I see patients early now, I'm starting to address men, telling them, look, you need to be evaluated. Let's take a look. And I'm surprised actually at how many guys that I've evaluated for something as simple as lower urinary tract symptoms, which can be symptoms such as frequency, urgency, weak stream. And I end up finding a lot of other problems.
Yeah.
I found guys that, you know, luckily because I look in early with a cystoscopy in the office to evaluate their lower urinary tract, I discovered they have bladder cancer.
Right.
And other things. And so that's another thing that I've become a lot more vigilant and I've become a lot bigger proponent of is if you're starting to, you know, once you get to that age of 50 in your mid 50s and 60s, lower urinary tract symptoms, you want to be evaluated. You want to at least have a cystoscopy, have a full discussion.
Yeah.
Don't just take Lomax and say, hey, I'm happy with this and I'm good. I'm going to keep
Right.
going. It is an option, but at least be evaluated to know, you know, is this really the cause? Do you have a stricture?
Yeah.
And things like that. Prostate cancer screening is very near and dear to my heart. That all males, you know, at a certain age need to start to really consider that. And more particularly for men who have a first degree relative that have had prostate cancer.
Yeah.
Or if you're an African-American male, you need to talk to your primary care physician. And if they're not comfortable with having the discussion with you about screening guidelines, then, you know, tell them to refer you to a urologist or,
Definitely.
you know, any urologist would be very happy to have a full and informed discussion with you about that in order to know exactly what you need to be concerned about and where you stand personally.
Right. I think that's so key too, because I think it's real easy on both sides, on the physician side, on the patient side, to have a patient that comes in with X symptom and you know that there is whatever medication that can treat that symptom, to start with that and maybe not do as much due diligence as you should do, and symptoms get better, but improvement of symptoms may not mean that if there were other things that were going on or other damage that has been done, that those things are corrected just because symptoms have improved. So I think that's a really key thing for all patients and really all providers, like as well, to think about, you know, what you're doing or what you could potentially be missing if you just decide to choose pharmacological therapy over, you know, really, really delving down to the root cause of the issue, which I think is good. Shouting out another sponsor. We love our sponsors here, of course. This particular portion of the show is sponsored by none other than The Sphere. Are you starting your business and looking for a place to advertise? Do you need to reach out to thousands of people across the world to build your brand or sell your product? If so, get your product placement and advertising needs handled right here at The Sphere. We offer a wide variety of content delivery platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Plus, we have a vast demographic reach within the United States as well as modern countries across the globe. Our enriched content and inspiring dialogue, coupled with your strategic ad, is surely to hit the mark every time. Call us today at area code 832-772-7789 or send an email over to advertise@thesphere.tv. Yeah, so that was really, really great information that you have provided for us. Appreciate you being here. To to sort of to wrap up, one of the other things that I've tried to do and that I'm very passionate about, and in general with men's health, but sort of more broadly in terms of medicine and African American med and medicine, is really trying to be a resource and an example for young students at whatever part of the journey that they're in, whether they are in high school and they're thinking about medicine, or college, or medical school, or residency, just really trying to be a source. So I guess my question for you is, when you decided to do urology, sort of what was your thought process on wanting to do urology, and how did you, or how were you able to identify mentors in the field as you went through medical school and then residency and fellowship training?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I appreciate you bringing up that point. And I'm sure we probably have had similar experiences.
Yeah.
Being Black men in medicine.
Sure.
I remember when I was in medical school, I was the only Black male in my med school class, a class of 120.
Yeah.
We had 6 females, and I was the only male.
Yeah.
Wow. And, that's a powerful experience to go through in life. And, I think probably a lot of us a lot of Black males, once you get to that level in where you're in medical school, you've probably experienced it a lot in your life.
Sure.
I remember when I was in high school, in my advanced placement classes, it was similar.
Right.
And so what I think we have to do is to definitely let our face be seen and be known to the generation behind us, to know that, look, this is capable, this is possible, this is doable, and you can achieve this.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's a big part of what I think mentoring really means to me, is just to let your face be seen and be known, so people know that it's capable. People that look like you know that it's capable.
Definitely.
Because I don't think we get that enough. When you're the only Black male in your med school class, you look around and you don't see anyone else that looks like you. That can be an intimidating setting.
Sure.
But, luckily I had good mentors. I had 2 mentors in my class, the class before me.
Right.
I had a couple of physicians in the hospital that, because they looked like me, took notice of me and made a point to ensure that I was navigating the system appropriately,
right,
and also helping me understand how to navigate problems that can occur and come up as you go through the journey.
Right.
And so, I mean, that is something that's true, something that's real. I think in the day and age that we live in, we would like to believe and hope that we have gotten past a lot of the issues that go along with this in the past, but it's still as real as it was, I would say, 50 to 100 years ago.
Sure. And
sometimes even worse, because where we are now, it's something that we try to turn a blind eye to say that, oh, society's better, so it's not an issue and not a big deal.
Yeah.
But for me, and I'm sure you're probably in the same boat, it's very important for me to let my face be seen and let it be known. In my journey, one of the things that got me interested in urology was that I knew early on that I needed to do something that involved my hands.
Yeah.
I played a lot of sports growing up. I enjoyed that side of me, kind of understand. And I had an engineering background in undergrad.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to work with my hands, wanted to fix things. I kind of like instant gratification, where there's a problem,
right,
I can fix it and we can move on.
Right.
And so once I understood that, I knew that something in the surgical field was probably going to be better suited to my personality.
Sure.
And to my way of thinking. I try to tell medical students nowadays, that there's people that are philosophers, and then there's people that are doers.
Sure.
People, I think, they go along, and the things on the medicine side of things tend to be thinkers and wanting to figure out the problem and long-term management. Whereas, if you're a surgeon, there's a problem, you're fixing it right away.
Right.
And so that kind of led me down that path. And then with urology, what I really liked was the technology involved in managing these diseases. Yeah. I feel that in the field of medicine, urology is one of those fields that's always on the cutting edge. Urology was one of the first fields to incorporate the use of robotic surgery to advance minimally invasive operations. Even now, for example, I was talking earlier about BPH.
Mm-hmm.
We have technology such as Urolift, which is a minimally invasive way of addressing BPH. So we're constantly on the cutting edge
Yeah.
in the field of medicine. And so that was really attractive to me. There's a lot of laparoscopic and endourology work that's done in management of stones. I played a lot of video games growing up, so
Yeah.
that seemed
There
straight
you go.
up.
So
up
video
north,
games
like,
had a
it goes
positive
hand in
influence.
hand. I can be good at this.
Yeah.
And so the lifestyle, the disease, the population of patients we take care of, all those were things that attracted me to the field of urology. And back to the mentorship point, I was lucky to find someone that was able to sort of guide me along in the journey
Yeah.
and say, hey, all right, so if you're interested in urology, these are the things you need to be concerned about. Here's a research project that I'm working on. Let me get you involved and on board.
Right.
Because those things were things that, helped my application when I finished medical school to get a residency spot.
Right.
And those are things that now, as a urologist out in practice, I try to reach back and provide that opportunity for others.
Definitely.
To let them know that, hey, all right, so this is the journey this is the path to this journey. No reason to try to reinvent the wheel when someone's already done that.
Definitely.
Just provide the playbook that I have to other people to use on their journey.
Definitely. That's incredible. Let me just shout out our last sponsor real quick and then sort of wrap it up and give our parting thoughts. So this portion of the show is sponsored by KOG and Company. Are your unique gifts and talents changing the world? Unleash Your Dopeness is a people empowerment movement built to encourage the masses to operate outside of their fears and have the gall to recklessly pursue their dreams and passions in life. Join thousands of others as we unlock the greatness that dwells inside. Shop dope gear at kogpassion.com. That's kogpassion.com, and use coupon code DOPE for 10% off exclusive Unleash Your Dopeness apparel. Act now. Sizes are selling out fast. Yeah, man. I think that was very, very well said. And I was watching the Quincy Jones documentary on Netflix the other day.
Yeah.
And in one of the opening scenes, he's being interviewed by Dr. Dre, I think, and somebody else. And they're sort of talking about his early life coming up and whatever. And he said something that was so simple but so poignant to me. And he said, you can only be what you can see. Something to that effect. And the point that he was trying to make was that when he was coming up, him and his brother, I mean, they were sort of, running around in the streets, running around with the wrong crowd, because what they saw was their measure of success was, the people who were gangbanging and selling drugs and what have you, right? And so I think that phrase or that thought that for some you can only be what you can see is so powerful. And I think it really is, in addition, obviously, primary responsibilities are to do our best clinically to take care of the patients that, we see and that, give us that responsibility, no doubt. I also think, based on the position that we're in, it's also our responsibility, like you said, to be visible for those kids who are coming up that maybe they don't have anybody that they can look at and see and say, that is attainable for me to become a urologist or to become a spine surgeon or to become an anesthesiologist, because they don't have those people around them that let them know that that's an option. So that's sort of, I'm similar to you in that way, where I'm very passionate about doing what I can now with the small platform that I have. But I think it's important to realize that wherever we are, we still have a circle of influence around us that we can impact somebody on a small level or on a large level. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's very true. I think we don't appreciate how much. I mean, even if it's one life you change, you don't know how many other people can be affected from that one person.
Right.
So even if it's in our little small circle that you make a difference in one person's life, you never know what that person will go on to be.
Absolutely.
And how many other tentacles, you
Exactly.
reach out from that one experience. So
Exactly.
it's sort of like you throw the rock in the water, and the ripple effects from that
That's right.
can keep spreading. So as long as we do our own portion in our corner of the world, you hope that slowly but surely that we have a significant impact,
Right.
and try to fix these problems.
That's right. That's right. Well, man, I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time on a
thank you for
busy
having me. I
Monday
appreciate
after
it.
work.
Look forward to coming on more, man.
Definitely, man. We'll definitely have to get you and Keiku back in together. Maybe that's how we'll have this little reunion, is to bring you guys both here.
It's needed.
But anyway, this is our show for the week. We thank you guys for tuning in. As always, tune in every week, every Monday. We'll have new, fresh content for you guys. And again, like we always say, continue to review, subscribe, and let us know what we can do to make the show better for you. Thank you guys. See you next week.